schoolwork and I can't get up. Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today I'm talking about the new album from Moby, Everything Was Beautiful and Nothing Hurt. Moby is an artist that is very difficult to put into words my full thoughts on. One of the most unique and versatile artists in all of electronic music. This is a guy I'm inevitably going to have to do a discography review on at some point, because I have a lot of things to say on him and his many albums. I'll skip the In Brief segment, since I've already done it in my review of his album from 2016, These Systems Are Failing, and you can see my thoughts there. We'll link that in the description. Now, I've been a fan for a long time and still consider myself to be, but I've admittedly been kind of wary about his most recent material. He's been steadily sliding downwards since, I'm gonna say, Last Night in 2008. Now, I loved that album, and I really liked his next album, Wait For Me, as well, but then Destroyed was just fine, but not really a keeper, and Innocence wasn't good at all. He'd built up a formula and was starting to get predictable, as well as just not really having the music to back himself up either. But right when I thought I was done with Moby, he gave me These Systems Are Failing, which went so against the sound he'd built up with his previous albums that I was completely blindsided by it. I didn't see an album that raw and aggressive coming out of him at all, and it was a lot of fun and pretty catchy too. That being said, it wasn't an album that I needed more of. The music was really samey, and had it run any longer, I'd have checked out. Which is why it became a problem when he released more fast songs about the apocalypse. I didn't honor that one with a full video review, and I don't think it really deserves one. I just posted a mini review on Twitter that I can't be arsed to find right now, but as you would guess from the title, it was just These Systems Are Failing again. I didn't need a second album of that stuff, especially with the novelty of him making that kind of music in the first place removed. Was it bad? Not precisely, but it felt redundant to me, and there's no reason for me to go back to that at all. On top of that, at one point he was trending on Twitter talking about having CIA connections who had solid evidence of Trump's collusion with Russia. Dude, are you really saying that Moby has freaking CIA connections, and that said connections thought Moby, of all people, would be the right person to convey this message to the world? Like, seriously, dude? Moby was really starting to sound like he was losing it. Going into this latest album, I had word that Moby was just going to be back to his usual sound again. After all the things I'd previously mentioned in this video, I was simultaneously anticipating this album and really dreading it. On one hand, he really only has those two albums that I mentioned that I don't like, with Innocence and more fast songs about the apocalypse. Even Animal Rights is at least interesting, if not totally my thing. But those two are still among his most recent. All I could say at this point was, Moby, I love you, man, but please, please, please don't let this album suck. At the absolute bare minimum, be approximately on par with Destroyed, preferably aim higher than that, though. If this album turned out to suck, I'd basically have to finally say, I'm done with this guy. These Systems Are Failing was good, but not good enough to completely restore my faith in him. I hadn't gotten any indication that this album would be anything special, but I suppose it could possibly be good still. I mean, it looked like Moby was using his political views as inspiration again, which, you know, I do agree with a lot of his views, and the ones I don't agree with, I at least understand where he's coming from, but if he doesn't at least have the music to back it up, then I can't bring myself to care. All he needs to do is deliver good music, and the fact that there was the very real possibility of him not delivering it all kinda scared me. So then, how did this latest album turn out? Well, I'm not gonna act like it's fantastic, but I did exhale a sigh of relief after hearing it. This album is good. It's not so amazing that he's removed from my watch list. I think he'll need another better album after this for me to be able to 100% forgive his previous missteps, but I did at least find myself enjoying this one and feeling a lot better about the direction Moby was going in. So there's not a lot to unpack here in terms of how it works by itself. This album shows Moby kind of returning to the 18 or Wait For Me sort of style and combining it with elements of, like, old school trip hop. Like, getting vibes off this that remind me of, like, Tricky's Max and Quay, Portishead's Dummy, Massive Attacks Mezzanine. Yeah, none of which are names I expected to be referencing directly in quite a while. I mean, old school trip-hop has been an influence on Moby since the old days, but that influence is surfacing in a bit more visceral way on this one. I think Innocence had a couple of moments that kind of went in this direction, but only on like 3 tracks or something. Incidentally, the only tracks from there I actually liked. Now, all of them are kind of like that. Just the rawness and ugliness straddling the line with prettiness and melancholy in the same way a lot of those old albums did. Even Moby's vocal appearance is very similar to Tricky's on Max and Quay. And the female singers are pretty well implemented as well. Like on some Moby albums, when I hear a female singer, sometimes it just catches me off guard. Like on some moments on 18 and Hotel. Not necessarily a bad thing in those cases, as I think it can lead to variety, but it's just like, whoa, what are you doing here? But here they blend in a lot better. Again, getting some Portishead sort of vibes occasionally. Though they have more of a gospel choral kind of bend to them too, which is more typical of Moby. A lot of these tracks do have those like synth string washes that seem to be in like every Moby album since... Geez, everything is wrong? I don't know. Sometimes it can make a track like The Middle Is Gone, which previously had a better vibe with its initial piano groove and feeling like it's piling on a bit much. But for the most part, it all fits together well. The production is really well balanced as well. All these sounds are satisfying to listen to, and there's no point at which things start to sound all dull and flat. There's enough texture to all these tracks to sound really nice, sometimes more electronic, sometimes more acoustic, the typical blend of instrumentation you'd expect out of a Moby album, basically. And it's not all super downbeat. There are some tracks which have a bit more bite to them, a bit more energy to them. Especially the lead single, Like a Motherless Child. That one gets my foot tapping a bit more. Also, I was expecting this album to be really political, as you can obviously see from the album cover, but it actually isn't. I mean, it's depressing. Moby talks about being depressed and about the apocalypse a lot, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out why Moby might be talking about being depressed and about the apocalypse in freaking 2018. But it's not much more depressing than the usual from him, which is kinda interesting. I mean, it's not like he went out of his way to just say, you need to go vegan and this is why. Like, it's around the same level as Wait for Me, and I think maybe even a bit less sad than that one, maybe? But like I said, this was not an album that wowed me. This is not on the same level as Play or 18 or Last Night or Wait for Me, and I feel like if Moby is going to properly wow me on an album again, he'll need to bring this kind of songwriting consistency to a weirder kind of album. Like, this album is pretty trimmed down, no filler, just 12 tracks, which are all approximately equally good, and that's perfectly fine, but I feel like this album could stand some of the stranger moments to flesh it out, something like JLTF1 or Stock Radio, 7 or Down Slow or Fireworks. This had just enough variety to hold my interest all the way through. I wouldn't call it samey, especially coming out of his last 2 albums, but I feel like it just needed some of those stranger tracks to help give it more flavor, help it pop out more in his discography. I know sometimes less is more and you don't have to have a long track listing to be good if you can contain the quality in there well enough, which is what this album does, but I personally can't rank it on quite the same level as those best Moby albums simply because the others are more interesting. Heck, even Destroyed was more interesting than this, just so happened to be not as good from an individual track basis, or felt like it could stick with me as much. Nevertheless, I'm just kinda nitpicking at this point, and it's not like I was let down with what we got with this album. I mean, I had pretty low expectations for this album. I'm glad that Moby is still able to make good music that perfectly fits within his style, but actually executes it well on top of that. Yes, he's had better than this, he's had much better than this, but he's also had worse. I think we'll have to see how well this album fares with repeat listens as these tracks start to grow on me more, but as it is right now, I think while not anything entirely unexpected or out of the ordinary for Moby, it's a solid album with 12 well-crafted and satisfying downtempo tracks, and I'd say it's worth checking out. I think I'm overall feeling a 7.5 out of 10. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.